Welcome back. It is 4:43 here on your Wednesday, and right now people are sharing their growing concerns over run-ins with bears. State environmental officials held a listening session to talk about bear management. We told you about this yesterday as the bear population surges across the state. Your reporter Roger Susannon joins us now live in the studio with more on this growing issue. Hey, Raj.
Hey, good morning, Kate. You know, right now environmental police do acknowledge that these increasing encounters are a real problem, but at a public meeting last night, they claimed the best way to deal with bears is to take steps to avoid them completely.
Environmental police warn these kinds of visits, bears coming into close contact with their human neighbors, are on the rise. West Hartford may be the epicenter of these encounters, with 999 bear sightings over the last year. Last night, DEEP held a listening session with the public to address their concerns and share tips from the bear management report their officers have been compiling to highlight how we can all live together safely. Experts say some smart strategies include preventing access to food by securing trash, removing bird feeders, installing electric fences, and, when all else fails, scaring bears away. DEEP warns bear home break-ins are also on the rise, and some people who attended last night's meeting believe bear hunting should be legalized. But right now, most experts believe education is the answer.
The problem is that the bears shot in the woods are not the same ones in people's homes that are being fed a buffet. The answer is to quit the buffet, to remove what's attracting the bears. They're food motivated.
And by the way, last night, some people in the crowd and even the environmental police said they would support starting a bear education plan in elementary schools. And guys, I assume that's talking about for the kids, not for the animals. Back to you.